Indigenous, First Nations, Inuit, Métis, Aboriginal. There are so many different terms out there that it can be kind of confusing if you don't know what they all mean. But actually, it might be simpler than you think. I'm Ozzy Michelin and I'm an Inuk journalist from Northwest River, Labrador, and I'm here to teach you how to talk about Indigenous people in Canada. Let's start with the term Indigenous. According to the United Nations, there are 370 million Indigenous people worldwide, spread across 70 countries. In Canada, there are approximately 1.4 million people who identify as Indigenous. Here, there are three distinct groups that make up the term Indigenous: First Nations, Inuit, and Métis. First Nations is the largest and most varied group of Indigenous people, and they can be found from coast to coast to coast. Sometimes I hear people using the term Indigenous and First Nations as if they were interchangeable, but they're not. Using Indigenous when you're referring to a specific group is kind of like saying Asian when you're referring to the Vietnamese or South Koreans. It works sometimes, but if you use it all the time, it just sounds wrong. The rule of thumb is to be as specific as possible. If somebody's Cree, it's okay to refer to them as being Cree, and if you don't know, ask them how they self-identify. Next are the Métis. The Métis are the descendants of First Nations and European settlers, and often refer to a distinct geographic group coming from the historic Northwest. You can find Métis all across Canada, but they all share a unique, distinct cultural heritage. The Inuit are the maritime circumpolar people of Canada, with a homeland stretching all the way from Siberia to Greenland. In Canada, there are 4 Inuit homelands, but they're not all just north of 60, with populations in both Quebec and Labrador. In the Inuit language, Inuktitut, the word Inuit means people. And you might have heard the term Inuk before. Inuk means person. So remember, it's one Inuk, many Inuit. And don't say Inuit people, because that's redundant. So that's it for First Nations, Inuit, and Métis. But what about Aboriginal? Do we still even use that term? Well, generally, no. It's out there still, but it's being replaced by Indigenous, which is an internationally used term. So remember these simple rules if you want to get it right. Be as specific as possible. If you're referring to one person or one community, then name it. If there's more than one community or people, then use the broader terms like First Nations, Inuit, or Métis. If there are different groups together, then say Indigenous. And if you don't know, ask. Most people are happy to tell you about where they're from, and where their parents are from, and where their grandparents are from, and where their whole family is from. That's kind of how it works in the Indigenous world. Thanks, I hope that helps. Nakumek.